Hey guys, good morning. Hope you're doing well today. We're going to take some time and study about Abraham today. But before we do, let's pray and invite the Holy Spirit to be here with us. Holy Spirit, we thank you for your goodness and your presence and your power. And we just ask collectively this morning that you would rest on us, that you would illuminate your word to us, but even more, you would illuminate the heart of God to us. Lord, we want to be a people that can hear you and know your heart and understand your heart and cooperate with you. So, Lord, today we pray for those things to be realities in our midst. And we ask that in Jesus' name. Amen. 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 Listen, we are in a great series from Genesis, and we have traveled through many stories already in Genesis. And Genesis is huge, by the way, guys. I didn't realize how long it was and how much content there was in Genesis. So this is super exciting. We're finally at a place where we can talk about Abraham, or as we hear from the Bible, Abram, which he was in the beginning. God did change his name, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Abram is one of those guys that we hear so much about. We learn about him from the time we're little children in our Sunday school classes, and we're hearing about Father Abraham, right? But there's so much in here that's rich and powerful and could be fresh for us if we allow it. So today, I want to challenge you to allow the story of Abraham to be fresh for you. And I know you've heard about him a lot. I know you know a lot about him, but let's allow it to be fresh today. God did some wild things with Abram. Wild things. Abram was just a guy living his life in the country, in the area of Ur. And God showed up one day and just began talking to him. Unfortunately, we don't know much about him before this. And so we don't know about his childhood. We don't know a lot about him, but we do know that he's about 10 generations removed from Noah. So he is in that genealogy related to Noah. He is one of the patriarchs that we look to, the founders of our faith. And he is a man that God changed everything through his life. Literally all of history flips on Abram, which is so crazy and so important. But we don't know much about his early story, and I'm so curious. You're probably curious too. I wish there was a whole other chapter in here between Noah and Abram so we could know more about him. But we do know he was in the land of Ur, and he's living there when God visits him. And God begins to tell him crazy things and make these wild promises to him that are just outlandish. They're just crazy. And we've heard these stories a lot. I grew up on these stories. So they're way, way too familiar. So I did something a little strange in my studies. I pulled out all the things, all the promises God said to Abram, and just let them stand alone for a little bit. And I want to read them to you. They're from 3 different chapters in Genesis, because God actually has these encounters with Abram 3 different times where God makes outlandish promises to him. So this is from chapters 12, chapter 15, and chapter 17. 3 different moments where God really spoke promises over Abram's life and did something magnificent with him. So I pulled all of the things God said out, and I want to read them to you, and I want you to just soak in them for a minute. From Genesis 12, God says to Abram, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. All people will be blessed by you. To your offspring, I'm going to give this land. Genesis 15, I am your shield. I am your great reward. A son from your own body will be your heir. Count the stars if you can. So shall your offspring be. I give you this land to take possession of it. And then in Genesis 17, you will be the father of nations. I will make you fruitful. Kings will come from you. I give you the land. These are just some of the promises. This isn't all inclusive, but you put them together and go, wow, this is how God talked to this man. This is how he talked to him. This is how God interacted with him. And it's really mind-blowing. I mean, these promises shaped history. They shaped generations. They shaped legacy. They stood in a way that shaped not only that, but changed Abram's identity and changed the things that were going to play out with his sons and his grandsons and on down through generations. These promises that God gave him included promises about God's relationship to him and included about God's relating to others through him and included the land, the very physical land, and included nations that hadn't even yet been formed yet. These promises are massive. The magnitude of them are really incredible. Still today, we look back on some of these promises and we can see them coming true in history, which is crazy when you think about it, that is how big these promises are. What is God doing here? God has picked this man, and for whatever reason, we don't know why Abram. I mean, I think it could have been a lot of different people, but he chose Abram. And God just like opens up heaven and dumps promise on him. Just like opens it up and goes, and this, and this. I mean, it's like literally better than winning the lottery. This is like unbelievable, right? This is like mind-boggling. And this is how God related to Abram. And it's unbelievable. There's so much we can learn about this story and just this simple reality of how God made promises to Abram. In Isaiah, it says something fascinating about him. It says God is actually talking to the prophet Isaiah. And God's talking to the prophet Isaiah about Abram, which is kind of cool, right? And this is what God says about Abram. He says that Abram was God's friend. Do you know that in all of the Old Testament, God doesn't say that about anyone else? Noah, he doesn't say Noah was his friend. He doesn't say Adam was his friend. He doesn't say David was his friend. None of the prophets are called the friend of God. Only Abraham was called the friend of God. So when you take that in context and you look at this, what's happening here? God is looking and going, this man's my friend. I'm going to share my dreams with him. I'm going to share my dreams with him. What God is opening up to Abraham is this is what I'm dreaming about. These are the things that I'm hoping for. This is my heartbeat, really, for you. And we look at this story oftentimes in light of Abraham receiving these and then walking it out, which is super important, and we're going to look at that. But what if you looked at it just from God's perspective of God finally finding a man that he can share his heart with and his dreams and his hopes with and his desire. God's desire was to have a people that loved him, that he could love and be in relationship with. And God finally found a man that he could build that people with. So God opens up his heart and shares his dreams with this man, which is super exciting. Wouldn't it be awesome if we all had that kind of friendship with God, where we were the kind of men and women that when we hung out with God, God enjoyed us so much and we were so familiar with him that he could say, hey, this is what I'm dreaming about today. And we could receive the dreams of God. Abraham was that kind of man that God could do that with. So I find it important in that space to ask myself about Abraham, what actually made him a man that could be that guy, that could be a friend, and that could hear the dreams of God? I want to know about Abraham, what was unique about him and different about him. So I can't go backwards because we don't know anything about Abraham before this point. We don't know, right? We have no idea what he was. But we can look very closely at how he responded to God. And that tells us a lot about what kind of person he was, what kind of character he had, and how he journeyed with God. So I did a little bit of research about Abraham's responses to these promises. And I want to review them with you a little bit and look at them. The first thing I found fascinating from the very first promise in Genesis 12, verse 6, it says that Abram walked the land. So God told him, you're going to move from Ur, you're going to go over here to this promised land that I'm going to give you, and it's going to be your inheritance. And so Abraham did that. He moved, and it says in the scriptures in chapter 6 of verse 12 that Abraham literally, if you really look carefully there, he walked the length and width and the boundaries of what God promised. So he heard God, and he said, yes, he obeyed. But then he went and literally put his feet around that land. He walked through the hills and the valleys and across the streams. He saw what the land smelled like, what kind of vegetation there was there. He noticed everything about this land. He walked it. He walked it. And you have to wonder, maybe you're wondering this now, what was he thinking? Is he thinking, wow, I hope this land's a good land. I'm going to go check it out, right? Or I don't know what he was thinking. I like to imagine that. I love to hike and walk, as many people know. So I'm always paying attention to the unique vegetation and what animals live there. Of course, I love to look for the wildlife. And, I'm always curious about this. And I'm sure Abram was a bit like, okay, you're giving all this to me. I hope it's I hope it's not like just sand in the desert. But, and it was good. It was good land. But I love how Abram decided, I'm going to check it out. I'm going to check it out. I'm not just going to hear about this promise. I'm going to walk it. I'm going to actually put my feet on the ground and inspect it. I'm going to understand it. I'm going to know it. If this is what God's dreaming about, I want to know it. I want to know it. I think that's beautiful. The second thing that I noticed about Abram in these promises is Abram did this thing repeatedly where he built altars to God. As a response to God's promises and God sharing his dreams with Abram, Abram would take stones and he would build an altar to God in those places. Abram was aggressive about his worship and his heart response to God. I mean, if you really think about it, how could you not, right? If God's telling you today, hey, this is my heart, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do through you, Alyssa, and through your generations to come, and these are my promises, I think we'd probably all stop. I hope our response would be, God, I just love you. Worship at its heart is just loving God for who he is. It's a beautiful response from our hearts to God. And this is what Abram did. He built altars. He was one of the first ones in the Old Testament to really build altars. And he actually built quite a few. The third thing that I noticed that I loved is in Genesis 15, chapter 6. It actually says about Abram that he believed the Lord. He believed the Lord. It's fun because it says he believed the Lord, which means he took God at face value. God said, I'm going to do this. And he said, yeah, you are. Awesome. Yeah, you are. I have to confess today, that's rarely my response to God. It's really unfortunate. I wish my response was more like Abram. But in the following sentence, right after that, in verse 16 of how Abram believed the Lord, Abram also did this. He said to God, how can I know? How can I know? So what this tells us is something really important, that you can believe God for his promise and still come back and ask for clarity. That's good. And ask for clarity. Abram's like, how am I going to be sure this is what you're saying? And God wasn't angry about it at all. God wasn't bothered. In fact, in all these passages, Abram would ask lots of questions. He would come back to God and say, okay, how can I know? What are you going to do? This is a problem, God, because of this. That's an obstacle to your dreams, God, that are so big. Here's an obstacle, right? Abram was really faithful about coming back to God for clarity and for God to unpack more. And sometimes I think we think in God's grandness and his bigness, which he is big and he is grand and he is majestic and he's wonderful and all those things and very powerful. We oftentimes hear a dream from God, we get vision from God, and we just go, wow, okay. And we keep our questions to ourselves. Because when we do that, do you know that we're not being the friend of God? Abram was the friend of God. So of course, if a friend of mine, if Angie makes me a promise of what she's going to do, and I have questions, I'm going to ask her because we're friends, and that's what we do. And we're on enough of a secure footing with each other that it's not intimidating or challenging or doubting one another to ask more questions. We get clarity because that's what we do, because we're friends. And this is how it was between Abram and God. He believed God, but that didn't mean that he didn't ask questions. That didn't mean that he didn't need clarity. That didn't mean that Abram didn't need proof or help to believe God. He needed all of that, and he got it. And he was faithful to lean in the promises, and in the places where he could have doubted and been walking in unbelief, he leaned in closer instead of pulling away. And this is beautiful about Abram. And the final thing that I love about Abram, that is the obvious thing, right, that Abram did, was Abram was ridiculously obedient in every one of these passages. I mean, we could sit here and only talk about this morning, easy, but Abram just automatically would obey. God said, I want you to move. I want you to move, go. And Abram did. He packed up his wife, his belongings, all the sheep and cows and whatever, servants, and they moved. This was not like a move today, and I've moved several times. And it's very challenging, even in modern times, to pick up and move. I can't even imagine what this was like for Abram, but he just did it. God said, this is my dream, and Abram said, let's go, let's do it. This is my dream, let's go, let's do it. And every time Abram was ridiculously obedient. And we know this about his life. Anyone that knows about Abraham knows that. And it's beautiful, whether it was circumcision or a giant move, or even the letting go of the promised son, Abraham just did it. He just did it. His response to the dream of God was just doing it. And when you're the friend of God, that's how you can respond. But I don't think you can respond that way unless you're God's friend. I don't think that's possible, because I literally look at Abraham sometimes and go, he's a crazy person. He's a crazy person. But the reality is he wasn't crazy. He was in love. Real obedience in real time, walking it out, taking action. This was Abram's way. There's so much tension. I hope you're feeling it in yourself as you're listening this morning. There's so much tension in this story for us. You know, I was known as a young adult and as a high school student for being a crazy dreamer with God. I mean, literally, I was crazy, certifiably so. Ask my parents; they would tell you about it. If it was out there to be done with God, I was going to do it. I had a bucket list of all the things God and I were going to do. We were going to work with refugees, street kids, prostitutes, I was going to work with the poor and live in the ghetto and do all these things. All these things, I had this list. Smuggle Bibles was on that list. And I mean, my list was crazy. It's just how I was wired. I just grew up loving God, and I thought God was the most awesome thing ever. And so we were going to do all these things. And I remember being young and going, God, if it's there and other people did it, I want to do it. I literally had a list with God, it still exists, of all the things I wanted to see God heal instantly. Right? All the things I want to see. That list still exists. It still exists. But in my late 20s in ministry, Amy and I experienced a pretty devastating loss in ministry, where a dream that I had carried just crumbled and disintegrated right in front of us. And it was brutal. It was brutal. Surviving that has probably been the hardest thing in my journey with God as a leader and as a follower of Jesus. And it was interesting because it took 7 years to recover from that crushing. 7 years. And they were 7 hard years, and I learned so much through the crushing. And so it was really an important part of the journey. But I remember 7 years later, somebody confronting me, some leaders I respected, and they said, Jim, why don't you dream? And I was so shocked. I was like, what? I don't dream? I'm the guy that dreams, the crazy dreams. You know, I'm the guy that dreams crazy enough dreams so that in our years of being newly married, my wife was terrified so many times because she's like, are we really doing that? You know? And I'm like, yeah, let's go. And so it's wild to see that this is our journey sometimes, isn't it? With dreaming. Our journey gets crushed and we experience disappointment. And so we just cut it off. Just cut it off. And some of us do that, and that's a tension. It's a real tension. We stop believing, we stop dreaming. When we do that, my point this morning is that we miss out on friendship with God. What we lose is not the accomplishment of the dreams. Listen, God's going to do it. He's going to do it. He may not use me, he might use Alicia, but he's still going to do it. God's going to do what God's going to do. Either I'm a part of it or not, either I'm his friend or not, but he's going to do what he's going to do. And when I stop dreaming with God, and I stop that process of dreaming with God because of discouragement or despair or disappointment, then what I'm really severing is not God accomplishing things in the world. God's still going to win people. He's still going to redeem and rescue and heal. He's going to do it. It just severs me from being able to be a part of that process because I'm not walking with him in friendship anymore. The people that are my friends, they know what I'm dreaming about. They do, because they come out of me all the time. I'm an external processor. Guess what? God's an external processor. And we get that from him because he loves to process his dreams with his friends. But it requires friendship with God to do that. Some of the other tensions we experience in this is that we dream our dreams instead of dreaming with him. We dream our dreams. And I've heard so many people say, this is what I'm dreaming about, this is what I'm dreaming about. And it's oftentimes very good things, a lot of times very self-centered things, which is normal for us. That's kind of how we roll. But I wonder at the place where we become God's friend when we suddenly decide that there are bigger dreams out there to be had. When we're God's friend, we actually dream his dreams. We actually get to dream his dreams. And it's not that our dreams are all bad. They're not that way. And many times they're kind of muddied. But when we become God's friend and we walk with him like Abraham walked with him, then suddenly our dreams become his dreams, and we can dream bigger dreams and bolder dreams and grander dreams, and actually dream dreams where we are more fulfilled because we're dreaming his dreams instead of our dreams. And there's a tension in dreaming, especially in American people. When we think that we can have anything we dream for, what if it's not about our dreams? What if it's about what he's dreaming? What if we surrendered our dreams and said, God, I'm your friend. I want to know what you're dreaming about. Right? And sometimes we talk about that, and I'm going to sacrifice my dreams. I'm going to lay them down on the altar. And maybe you need to do that. But maybe what you need to do is discover that you're God's friend. And as his friend, he wants to share his dreams with you. He wants to open up his heart and let you dream with him. Maybe that sacrifice isn't as painful as we make it out to be. Maybe it's actually liberty and freedom. The other tension I think we feel is our dreams stay super small. When they're only about us, they stay about us. And I wonder sometimes, where are the dreamers that are dreaming with God, not just for their journey, but for all those that are coming after them? Friends, we have sons and daughters and a nation and a city that's going to go on long after we are done. And the dream of God is so big because he's so big that it doesn't just touch you, ever. The dream of God for you is also a dream of God for your children and for your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren and your adopted children and your spiritual children and for all who are far off. God dreams so big that he is not limited just by your lifetime. He actually wants to dream with your lifetime for lifetimes. He wants to dream about your journey for journeys. Abram's journey was so fantastic. You have this one guy, and through him, literally, God redeems the world through him. Because that's God's heart. Through you, God wants to redeem the world. He does. The dream has not changed. It's very much the same. How he does it is up to you and him. But he wants to do that. He wants to dream promises with you that shape history. He wants to dream promises with you that encompass generations. And finally, the promises of God changed Abram's identity. He went from Abram to Abraham in the context of promises and dreaming with God. And what I would say to you finally this morning is that if you become God's friend and you are willing to dream with him, it's going to actually shape who you are. Not in a scary way, in a powerful way, in a wonderful way. You're actually going to step away from the you that you've built and step into the you that is a part of history shaping promises and generations. And you get to go on that journey with him. But you have to be his friend to bravely tread on that ground where he shapes your identity and not you. Where his dreams shape your journey and not just yours. Where your journey and your dreams touch the nations and the world. And it can be so. It can be so. I want to challenge you today with this. I want to dare you to remedy what's broken in you that keeps you from dreaming with him, that keeps you from dreaming his dreams. We all struggle with this. This is not just for some. This is for all. We all struggle with this. It's a journey for all of us. Many of us have experienced crushed dreams. Many of us have experienced selfish, self-centered dreams. And many of us have been afraid to even put our foot out there and dream because we know it's going to reshape our identity. So there is a lot of resistance. There is a lot of tension. But what I want to push in front of you today is, if you love him, if you want his love to flow through you, would you allow your friendship with him to lead the way? Abram's friendship led the way to overcome all those obstacles. And if you really dive deeper into his story, you'll see it again and again and again. So much so that he became the friend of God and a man that everybody knows his name, and everybody knows that he was a great man of faith, and he was a friend of God. Be God's friend today. Be God's friend. Dream his dreams. Do the brave work that entails becoming his friend so you can overcome and dream his dreams. Amen? Amen.